I think that we have to go back to the impact what COVID has had on the organisation. I mean, we've had to keep our workforces separate. That's had an impact on productivity. And despite the fact that we're not as productive as we have been, we have got a motivated workforce to make sure we get things done, we get goods cleared, and once the ships are here, we're getting good throughput through the terminal. The dwell time of the container is around 1.8 days, which by international standards is first class. And delivery on the truck grid, both auto and manual, is around the same.
So it's all COVID's fault?
COVID has played a big part.
Because Tauranga Port is going gangbusters and it would have been facing the same kind of COVID challenges as you. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, it doesn't have the same COVID factors as we do because we are the largest import port in New Zealand. And, of course, there has been a rush of import cargoes. Now, at the time of COVID, our customers told us that they would be at least 30% down in throughput. That didn't happen. And no one saw the demand cycle coming. So we all misread the situation. And look, we've also got a situation where 8 months ago, Treasury was predicting unemployment of 13.5%. And along that basis, our customers were telling us, well, you'll see a drop of 30% in imports. We were expecting a terrible year.
So you haven't answered my original question. Why should you keep your job? The Mayor of Auckland is unable to express confidence in you. We've had correspondence from people who feel that you're not up to the job. So why should you keep your job?
Well, it's interesting. I read the headline of that story, and it's classic clickbait media theatre. When you listen to what the Mayor said, it's fair enough. He wants to see the result of automation. In any case, I talked to the Mayor directly and we meet regularly, and I met him the day after your interview. It was a good meeting. I'm clear on his expectations, and that's how it should be.
He was very clear. He cannot at this time express confidence in you. He is remaining quiet until he sees automation complete, as you say, but he can't express confidence in you right now.
The Mayor has expectations, and I'm very, very clear about those.
And you're not meeting his expectations at the moment, are you?
Well, those expectations that I've just explained to you have been as a result of COVID.
Right, so we're back to the same point that you're saying that this is all due to COVID. But looking at the port's annual results, in terms of share of the container market, crane rates, rolling container totals, it looks like you've been trending down in some cases from as far back as 2014. So that indicates it's not all COVID, doesn't it?
A market share and COVID are two separate things, and I accept that our market share has been declining somewhat. In fact, that's our overall market share, but our import market share has been increasing, and there is a reason for that. We've had so many what I would call port studies on the Ports of Auckland, and I wouldn't like to think how many millions have been spent, but we had a port future study which put in question the geographical location of Ports of Auckland. And at that time, we also gave away the ability to reclaim land. So that's how and why we had to automate, so that we could increase our capacity from 1 million to 1.5 to 1.8 million. And the very reason that we've lost market share is that we haven't had the capacity.
All of this obviously is of little consolation to people whose livelihoods are being jeopardised because of delays and inefficiencies getting their freight, which is coming through your port. What reassurances can you give them that you're going to deliver by Christmas when they need this?
Well, we still have delays. We had one ship outside today, and that's been delayed 4 days. But on average, we're about 8 to 9 days at the moment. But we're
so people aren't going to get their goods by Christmas then?
Possibly not. But I think you've also got differentiators with certain importers, and some are working on the just-in-time principle. Others actually have buffer in their stock, and they're okay. But it's obviously the ones that haven't got buffer and need their goods. But we're working hard to actually employ more people. Okay,
well, let's talk about workers then. How short are you?
Well, so far we've hired 23 more people so far, and we need a few more crane drivers. In fact, we need 12 crane drivers, and we need about 10 more straddle drivers. So we're well on the way.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that we're dealing with a very, very tight labour market, and what we're finding is that despite the fact we've got 23 FTEs through the door, we're only having a 25% success rate. And we're not lowering our standard in terms of the people we employ.
Right, this is really interesting because we've heard from a straddle crane driver who's had more than a decade of experience at your port.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that person applied for one of the jobs and got an email back, which we've seen, that says they don't have enough experience. I'm wondering, what kind of worker are you after? Are you after a cheaper worker?
No, most certainly not after a cheaper worker. I mean, straddle drivers and crane drivers are paid very well. But we have a certain standard and skill set. So there's two things we're doing. We're employing from outside based on the skill set criteria, but we're also retraining people who have got the critical skill factors.
How many of those workers did you rationalise or trim back as you headed into automation?
We didn't.
None, you're saying? Because that's not what your workers tell us.
No. Well, we have the same staff numbers as we have a year ago, about 272.
The same configuration, the same number of straddle drivers and crane drivers?
Yes.
So you're saying nobody lost their job as a result of automation?
No one has lost their job as a result of automation. And the workforce has been told very, very clearly that we will only consider redundancies after automation is fully embedded. And the other thing that we've told them is we would much rather build up the volume and keep the staff. And that's been communicated widely in the organisation.
Okay. How well is automation working?
We're very happy with automation, but as you...
How can you be happy with it when you're not meeting targets and you had an incident with one of your automated cranes recently?
Well, we are meeting targets. In fact, the first week of automation, we achieved crane rates, which was by far world standard. The only issue that we've got is that we should have had full terminal rollout by now, but we had to put that on hold because of COVID, because we couldn't get the software engineers and people from Kona Cranes out here, and we couldn't train people. So we had to put automation on hold, and that's the reason why we are delayed, and that's why we don't have the capacity. But if you talk about how we're going with automation, we're very happy with the way it's performing. But it's a complex system. It's complex software. And, every time you have an upgrade, there might be issues. But we have issues with terminal management systems, which also control the manual strads.
Okay, well, that's interesting again, because what you're saying conflicts with what we are hearing from your staff. Mm-hmm. On Monday, we understand that you had 3 auto cranes that were operating that were shut down because they were becoming overloaded and had on average slow or low shifting rates, 4 to 6 boxes an hour. And then you went over to manual drivers because they could shift more. Is that what was happening?
That's not correct.
So what is the truth of the matter?
We had a 3-hour delay with the cranes on Monday, and it had nothing to do with automation. It was to do with a system called XPS, which is related to our main terminal operating system. So it had nothing to do with automation.
But that meant that your automation wasn't able to be at full capacity? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, the automated straddles still delivered to the road grid and in record speed. But
not at the full operating capacity that you would be at if you hadn't had that glitch.
Lisa, it had nothing to do with automation.
So did you swap over to using manual drivers on Monday because of issues?
No, you can't do that.
So there were no problems with automation on Monday, is that what you're saying?
The northern terminal stopped for 3 hours because we had an issue with XPS, which is linked to our terminal operating system. It has nothing to do with the software called Teams that drives automation.
So what, was the system overloaded?
No, it wasn't overloaded. It was a software glitch, which happens periodically. In every port around, funny enough, in every port around the world, it happens.
Okay, so you did have issues.
Yeah, but it was nothing to do with automation.
You've had safety issues there, serious safety issues. You've had 2 people die on your watch.
Yes.
Who are those 2 people?
Well, I know the 2 people, but I'm not going to name them on the program. But and we recognise that we do have. Do you
know their names, Tony?
Yes, I do know their names.
Okay, so they're in the public domain. Who are they?
Yeah, Palamo Kalati and Laboon, Dyer Laboon.
Laboon Dyer, yeah.
Yeah.
So are workers safe there at the port?
I believe workers are safe. We recently undertook a survey, and it would appear that we do have, however, some what I would call safety culture issues, which we're addressing at the moment.
Safety culture issues? So that sounds like areas where you're not safe?
Well, what it boils down to is that there are some people that are not speaking up, and we encourage people to speak up when they consider that something or someone is working unsafely. And we've been doing a lot of work in the last months to retrain, recalibrate, and make sure that all our people are not fearful of coming forward and saying what they want. We want them to feel safe. They have to feel safe.
So why don't they feel safe to speak up? Isn't that an issue with your culture and environment?
Yes, and I recognise that there has been an issue around our safety culture, which we are addressing.
So why are they unable to speak up?
Well, they could be cultural issues, but I can assure you in the last months, and again through the staff engagement survey, we've had significant follow-up to make sure people are not afraid to speak up and talk out about wanting to feel safe and what are the issues.
What do you mean by cultural issues?
Well, cultural issues, we have a large Pacific Island Maori community, and very often they are what I would call shy in coming forward to address issues. We've spoken to them, and we want to ensure that through their leaders that they are and have an avenue to come through and express how they feel about safety.
Are they scared that they're going to lose their jobs if they do that?
No way. No, we want a no-blame culture.
Understand that, but is part of their fear that they will lose their jobs?
Absolutely not.
Have you asked them that?
Yes.
So I understand you recently did a staff survey. What did that tell you?
Well, what it said, the first thing is that people enjoy very much working at the Ports of Auckland. So I think that's a really good thing. And despite the fact that we have had what I would call a hell of a year, our people have been heroic. They've stood up, and despite the fact we've got some operational issues, they are delivering and they're working hard, despite what I would call an area where there is some fear. COVID did create fear, but our people worked all the way through COVID to make sure that essential and non-essential items were delivered. And that you've got to be proud of.
What responsibility do you take for the deaths at the port and the current problems with freighting delays?
Well, I have to take responsibility for the deaths, and I have to take responsibility for the freighting delays. But, COVID didn't start at the Ports of Auckland.
And how does that responsibility manifest itself?
Well, we're doing everything possible to make sure that we can operate in a far more efficient manner.
I'm asking about you because you've said that you have to take responsibility, and you do. So yes. How are you taking responsibility?
I'm working very hard to make sure that we can get the operation back to normal, along with my team.
So, how do you rank the port's performance right now?
I'm not happy with the port's performance.
How do you rank the port's performance?
Well, look, Lisa, for 4 years in a row, we've won Best Port in Oceania. So, we're talking about one glitch here, and yet we've had and have been the highest productive port in Oceania. Now, that doesn't come at, and that's voted for by our customers. So that says something. And this glitch, as I've already explained to you, we put fairly and squarely at the feet of COVID. And if customers tell you at COVID time that you're going to have a reduction in volumes of 30%, what do you think you do?
Do you really think it is one glitch? You've had 2 deaths in recent times. You've acknowledged that you're unable to get the staff that you need. People are fearful about reporting concerns in the working environment, and some people don't feel safe there. Surely these things are all connected and they are not just a single glitch.
You were referring to our operational performance, and I said that our operational performance has been impacted by COVID, fairly and squarely. We underestimated, as did many, many people, many organisations, the demand curve, and we're doing something about making sure we can meet that demand curve going forward. But you can't solve it overnight.